and welcome to another episode of the Healing Lyme Summit. I'm your host, Dr. Mariah Hinchy. And tonight I'm so excited to have here with me and us the executive director of both ILADS, the International Lyme and Associated Disease Society, as well as ILADF, which is the International Lyme and Associated Disease Educational Foundation. So, Sarah is on a mission. She just joined these two awesome organizations last year, and she is helping to fulfill their mission and expand on their vision. So, welcome, Sarah. Please tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and what made you want to become the executive director of these organizations.
Not a problem. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to just have the opportunity to have this, to use this platform to be able to share about ILADS and ILADF. So really briefly, I'm from New York. I was born and raised in Poughkeepsie, and my education took me to North Carolina and took me to Florida, and then took me back into the Washington, D.C. region. The bulk of my career has been in health and human services, and mostly in hospice and palliative care. And I'll tell you, it's a little bit of a natural progression to come into this phenomenal community of ILADS practitioners, and it just made it just a natural change. But I actually got interested in tick-borne illness through my father. Again, upstate New York, my family's all still there. Grew up in around a 5-acre, nice hilly wooded area that was chock full of ticks. And of course, my father, like many other folks, got Lyme disease, and actually has been fortunate. He's had it several times, and most of the time he's had the kind of the typical achy joints, fever. I think only one time did he ever have the bullseye rash. But he was smart enough to know, I'm not feeling right. I'm going to my doctor. And every time he was able to catch it pretty quickly, until this last time, the last couple of years, it went. And unfortunately, this is sort of the typical story that we get to hear. He was misdiagnosed or undiagnosed for a long time. Symptoms got so bad, and finally he was able to get the right care from the right practitioner and got on a good protocol. And I still think years later he's dealing with the after effects of that. And he certainly is much more, I don't want to say paranoid, but much more aware, not just for himself, but obviously the whole family around, to make sure that they do the tick checks, and they wear the appropriate clothing, and they do all the right things. So maybe the good that came out of that is it's raised some awareness, at least in the community that they're in. But anyway, that's really how I got interested in it, and through my professional networks came to ILADS, and actually about a year ago. So I've been there a little over a year now, and just like you said, I'm on this mission to bring ILADS back out into the forefront. We've never gone away. We've never wavered in our mission. But it's time I'm not a quiet soul, so I like to shout things from the rooftop. So that's what we're going to do. ILADS and ILADF, you're going to hear us. You're not going to be able to ignore us anymore.
Well, that's great. And that is what is needed. So I, for one, am so, so happy that you are here and you're kind of running the show now. So I'm excited to see what you do. I've been part of this organization for a long time, over a decade, and it's helped me tremendously. A lot of what I know educationally about Lyme and co-infections, I truly do. I contribute that to my years of going to these annual conferences that ILADS puts on. So I'm just so excited to see what you do with it. So why don't you share with us your mission with
Sure.
ILADS?
So for those who don't know, ILADS is a nonprofit international, there's the I in ILADS, International Multidisciplinary Medical Society, and we're dedicated to the diagnosis and treatment of Lyme and other complex inflammatory diseases. We promote awareness and understanding of those diseases through science, research, and especially education. And we support physicians, scientists, research, all manner of healthcare professionals who are truly in this space, dedicated to defining and advancing that excellence in that standard of care. And it's interesting. ILADS is really the only nonprofit professional membership organization that's really focused solely on this. I mean, we are focused on tick-borne illness, and we represent programs and professionals literally worldwide.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, as far as, one of the things that I think is super important to point out is I know kind of like, and I don't want to say like old ILADS, new ILADS, but, sometimes we get stuck in ways that we think about organizations or how people may have felt like when they've attended a certain conference or whatnot. And I think it's just so important to emphasize what you just said, where like, all medical practitioners who want to learn about and support patients suffering from these infections are welcome. Like this is no longer just like an MD club, like this is for all different professions, that want to help everything from, you know, health coaches and naturopathic doctors and medical doctors and osteopathic doctors and PAs and nurse practitioners and psychotherapists and psychiatrists, right? Like all of these different people who, frankly, are just needed, to be able to give patients like the holistic, well rounded approach that's necessary to be able to heal from this infection.
So I would say there's two key points in our mission, and you just nailed both of them. I'd like to say, oh, it's all because of me coming in. It's not. I mean, I just came in at the right time and place. I mean, our board of directors for both ILADS and ILADF have rededicated themselves. It's really kind of neat to sort of just sit back and watch this transition happen, and it's happening in the community. So I think ILADS is just now coming along with the community. And one of the key things that the board really did in a retreat that we had late last year, I say complex inflammatory illness, and that's a key thing. I mean, we are about Lyme, we are about tick-borne illness, but we realize that there is such a larger capacity to be learned, to be trained, to be able to provide to the consumer and the patient community. And I love that rededication. And the other part, and you said this, it's all healthcare professions. It's not just MDs, or it's not just naturopaths. It is truly comprehensive. And I mean, like, bottom line, right? I want my healthcare practitioner to have the full scope of education and training so that the patient, can get the best manner of care. And truly within ILADS, there's been this fantastic conversation that's really kind of just blown up just wonderfully in the community of, if you treated one patient, you've treated one patient. So you need to make sure that, okay, so there's allopathic care to be had, but then there's also naturopathic care to be had. And every patient's going to respond differently. You know this, you see this every day. And I think the really kind of cool thing that ILADS is coming into now is truly incorporating that multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary care, understanding that there's going to be components of all sides of it that are going to be able to help that patient. And I think that's really key. And I'm excited to be a part of that. But again, I've just happened here at the right time, I feel like.
Yeah. And I know when you and I have talked in the past too, it's like, regardless of how, what your style of treating is, it's important to understand what other people are doing in the space. So, like for me, when I'm seeing a patient in Connecticut, my scope of practice doesn't allow me to do antibiotic therapy, like prescription antibiotics. I mean, by choice, I was kind of forced into learning to do things the way that I do them. And I wouldn't do them if I didn't think at this point it was, in my opinion, the best way. But, it's like I still need to understand all of the other pharmaceutical treatments that are out there, and I need to understand how to combine them and why I would combine them. And it's not just for me, it's so that when I have a patient coming to me and I take their history and I see like what they've been through, but yet they're still infected and they're still suffering, it's like I need to be able to evaluate if that person even had anywhere near, what would be considered like an appropriate treatment. Because, you could be on antibiotics for decades, but like if you're not being prescribed the right combinations for the right amount of time in the right dosages for whatever infections are there, you're not going to get better, so it's like we all kind of need to understand what each other's doing. So I love that the emphasis is kind of being put on this right now.
Yeah. And we really are focusing on all levels and all types of practitioners, just because, say, if you're an ND, you may also have a nurse practitioner in your practice that can have a completely different point of view that will help that patient. I mean, everyone does this. They do this in their office, right? You come together as a team and talk about the care of a particular patient. And I always loved, especially in my hospice days, I would sit back and watch the interdisciplinary team talk. So you would have the medical director talking, but then the nurse and the social worker and the counselor, and everybody would bring a different perspective. This community is no different. Your ultimate goal is still the best care for that patient. And so everybody's going to bring different perspectives in. Even, I know we'll talk a little bit more about some of our signature educational offerings, but if you sit in our fundamentals course, you as an MD are going to get a very different perspective than someone who is an osteopath, or someone who is a nurse practitioner, or even a physician's assistant. But I feel like everybody needs to have that minimum bit of education under their belt, even just to be part of that conversation. So I'm so glad that there are folks like you who are doing that and are getting the full scope of care.
Yeah, I'm very, very passionate about, if you're going to treat something, you really need to understand the basics. Like you have to know the foundation, you have to understand the pathophysiology and, just like the basic mechanism of actions of everything, to be able to figure out how to treat your patients, because this is very different in different individuals. So, can you share with us some of your what steps is ILADS taking to improve the understanding of tick-borne diseases in general, and what research programs do you have going on in advanced education and things like that?
Oh, that's a great question, and really is the crux of why we exist today. I feel like, I mean, we first and foremost, we recognize the pivotal role that education has in the medical community. So our ultimate goal is for all healthcare professionals to leverage all the information that we can possibly glean to them, and make a positive impact on their patients' lives. And so one of those key things, I think, that's sort of a sweet spot for ILADS. I mentioned our vector-borne illness fundamentals, and that's a one-day course. We offer it once a year at our scientific conference. And it's set up in different modules, and it runs the entire scope of identification of all the ticks that are out there, all the different diagnostics, all the testing, all the different kinds of treatment, including herbals and pharmaceuticals and all the different components, and doing some kind of grand round style case studies. And then the other, I think, signature component that I think is a wonderful offering that ILADS has is our physicians training program. And this is actually something that I'll get off on a tangent talking about this. I want to really blow this out of the water, because I think this is really, again, where the sweet spot that ILADS can have. And calling it a physicians training program might be, I don't know, a little limiting. I'd like to expand that out, because it's not just physicians that take this training. It's a whole course of shadowing a practitioner, and there's learning, there's online learning, there's grand round style, there's webinars, and then there's, like I said, just hands-on learning that you get to have with a practitioner. And we have NDs and MDs that are our preceptors, and I want to be able to expand that to many more different levels of care, because again, like a nurse practitioner is going to get a wonderful perspective that's going to be very different than say an MD, but they shouldn't miss out on that opportunity. So those are really our two key signature offerings. But then beyond that, we offer a whole host of webinars, on-demand learning. We do seminars, and then, of course, our scientific conference that we offer every year.
So far we've talked about like the professional avenues. I know that ILADS has quite a following, right, by lay people and patients. So when you're talking about these webinars, are these things that patients would have access to?
That's a great question. So I do want to make clear that, like, first and foremost, we are a medical society. So, but that doesn't, I mean, we're a unique community of members that are successful only because of the care that they give to those patients. And so we really haven't make an effort, and I'm expanding that effort to reach those patients, reach those consumers, and really the webinars that we offer at no cost to the patient. We offer on our website a whole host of really just FAQs and articles and all kinds of different levels of learning. And I would say the biggest key that we do offer, and I want to be able to expand on this, we're starting to do some collaborative efforts with other organizations that already have some fantastic online learning. So ILADS doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's just share to a broader audience some of these webinars and some of these virtual offerings that we have. We understand that the patient population is desperate to seek answers. And I mean, if you've walked in their shoes, you understand the challenges that they have, and they're probably even more robust in their research than than some folks in the medical community, because they're desperate to find answers, and they're desperate to seek out a practitioner, hopefully an ILADS practitioner, to be able to get those answers. So they come to us organically, and we want to be able to offer at least some basic information. But on the other side of that, I want to be able to offer some resources. So no, maybe we don't have all the answers for them, but I don't want to leave you high and dry if you're coming to us asking, well, how do I pay for some of this treatment, or what's out there in my area to be able to find a provider. Those we can help with as well. And I want to be able to expand on those kind of opportunities. We have a provider search on our website. If you just go to ilads.org and there's a little provider search button, you can search by geography, you can search by clinical background. We want to be able to make that a more robust site to be able to offer. It's a great benefit, obviously, to ILADS members, but the bigger benefit is to the consumer. And then in addition, be able to offer more educational opportunities to the public.
That's great. So, in addition to like these in person conferences for a medical practitioner and with like the physician's trainings, and I know, there's a fellowship program in the works and all of that. How additionally does ILADS work with the medical community to enhance patient outcomes, better outcomes for patients in need?
So I'm a huge proponent of partnerships and collaborations. And just like I mentioned, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. There's some phenomenal education happening out there in this community. And no, has not cornered the market on that. We have obviously some great offerings, and I feel like if we could mandate all practitioners take it, I would. But I would also say, again, if you're trying to get the full education to give the best care for the patient, you need to seek out all manner of education. So I feel like we have this ability to be able to share education and opportunities that other folks are offering, and be able to showcase ILADS members who are doing those kinds of educational opportunities. Again, it's all boats, rise with the tide. And the other part of the collaborations, I mentioned some other organizations are doing some great webinars, some great education. We're working with Project Lyme right now to offer some monthly webinars. There's a series that they do that we are helping to promote, and again, offer to a wider audience. At our scientific conference in 2023, and again, we're going to work with them in 2024. We're working with MAPS, which is the Medical Academy of Pediatric Special Needs. It's a phenomenal group that focuses on I would say infant through adolescence, that we've been able to partner with, and we're doing it again. I want to be able to do more of those kind of partnerships with other groups, be it specific to integrative medicine, to a specific state or a specific region, or however we can collaborate. The ultimate goal is to be able to get that education and be able to get the right care to that patient. So any which way, we're getting the word out and being able to offer more opportunities, then I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I love that ILADS is partnering with MAPS, my other favorite organization. And I mean, it's just great, instead of everyone trying to like kind of do their own little thing, it's just like look at all these stages, right? That like it's like MAPS is just another stage for ILADS and ILADS another stage for MAPS. And, again, it's really like getting the education, getting the information, getting the message out there. And you could have, people that are new to MAPS and they're there because they want to learn about autism spectrum disorder or PANS and PANDAS or, fill in the blank with like the special needs topics. And it's like, they might not even realize at first, like how much of a role Lyme, Bartonella, Mycoplasma, all of these infections actually play. And so, this interaction between just, for example, these two organizations is huge for spreading awareness. So I just love that.
Absolutely. And I'm always open to new suggestions and new conversations, because it just was a happenstance conversation that has now led to a wonderful partnership. And we're doing the same thing in North Carolina with the North Carolina Integrative Medicine Society. Same kind of thing. It's just a conversation that's leading to, oh, there's some great synergy to be had. How can we help each other to be able to help your members, help our members, and help the clinicians who are not members yet of either organization? I mean, that's
Right.
kind of the key, right? You want to be able to not only take care of the clinicians who are providing the care, who are ILADS members or MAPS or both, but be able to reach the ones who aren't, and maybe I always call them ILADS curious, but you want to take that initial step, take an action to do some education, and then realize what a phenomenal community this is and how much we have to offer and join.
Right. And so, as the name says, ILADS takes this a step further, right? Globally. So, can you comment a little bit on how ILADS is affecting the global Lyme?
This blows my mind. So the I in ILADS, I mean, I hand it to the founders of the organization from day one to make this international, and it's amazing to watch this grow. I mean, we're in 21 countries, including Canada and the UK, and we're constantly getting new members asking questions from all over, from Turkey, from Iran, from all over Africa. And they're having the same issues, I think, that maybe the US was maybe 20 years ago. Their governments are fighting with them that Lyme doesn't exist, or here's the protocol to use, and you get 2 days of antibiotics, and that's the end of the story. And the clinicians themselves are desperate for answers, and so they come to ILADS to be able to get that education, to be able to get that training. And so really where we sit, it is, again, it all comes to the land of education. I feel like we offer, again, our scientific conference, but we also this year, in April of this year, we're offering a European conference in Munich, to be able to come to closer to those practitioners who need that. I'm hoping we are able to do that on a more often basis. Thanks COVID, but I think the last international conference we had was 2019. So 2019 to 2024 seems like a big gap. So we're going to try to do a better job of getting out there more. But then in addition to that, this is really where ILADEF, the Educational Foundation, can come in, because we offer grants and scholarships to a lot of international folks so that they can make it to that education, so that they can make it to the conferences, so that they can access the online on-demand learning, and that they can actually come to the US or Canada or wherever they want to be able to participate in the physician's training program or fundamentals. And there's an ongoing dialogue that we're trying to that we want to try to meet those needs of folks literally worldwide. I want to be able to do a better job of reaching them and being able to serve their needs as well as those in the US.
Yeah, that's great. So, and then also just recently, right, ILADS has expanded from just focusing on tick-borne or vector-borne disease, right? And now they've expanded into looking at most of the other chronic complex inflammatory diseases. So obviously, this is going to include COVID and mycotoxin illness and other environmental toxicants that can cause ongoing inflammation. Tell us more about that and kind of what the plans are.
So that is a key component, I think, of ILADS moving forward, is that inclusion of that language of complex inflammatory illness. And again, this is the non-clinician talking to the expert here, right? We're, the public is now understanding that, oh, the microbiome, the gut microbiome, hey, that might be something that affects it. You've been doing it for years. This is not new. Realizing that, again, mold in the home and some of these sensitivities that these patients have, this is not a new moment for folks. And I feel like ILADS is now catching up with our mission is catching up with the care that's already been happening out in the community. And so some of the ways that we're expanding on that, again, education is a key, but really this is where I think some of the research that we're working on is coming in now. We're embarking on a project that is really just going to be a data mining opportunity for practitioners. We're making anonymous data. I'm terrible at saying that. So that we can gather that and be able to allow and enable practitioners who are researchers to have the full scope of care, the full scope of research in trying to figure out what's happening with these patients. And I think this is really where that going beyond Lyme disease, it's an interesting transition, I think, for this organization, because we do still focus on tick-borne illness, but as you know, it's so much more, and we are just scratching the surface of that. And actually, one of the ways that we are showcasing that is in our fall scientific conference this year. Our working title is redefining Lyme disease and the fusion of science and practice. So we're not we have our roots. We're not straying too far from them, but we are widening that world and being able to incorporate so much more into the care. And I'm sure there are patients who are, this again, who are dealing with so many things that you just have to systematically handle each symptom, handle each component one at a time. And this is complex inflammatory illness. This is where it originates. This is where it comes to. And again, I think ILADS is in this wonderful sweet spot that through presentations, through seminars, through webinars, that we're really able to tap into the expertise of you guys that are out there in the community doing that work and sharing it with other folks so that all patients can really benefit from it.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. I'm so happy to hear this because, from all of our conversations, it's like, Lyme and co-infections are an inflammatory disease, and that inflammation is going to, break down all of the sort of systems of the body and create different symptoms in different patients. But then also, like, all of these other things that we have going on in the world, like, for example, COVID, mycotoxin illness, toxicants, just in general, um, they're going to all increase the inflammation, right? And increase the sickness. And it's like, well, of course, we can't treat the underlying tick-borne disease without addressing all of these other things. So I think it's always, or at least for several years, it's been, part of ILADS. I just think it's not necessarily been in the titles, right? But
Right.
it's definitely always been there. And again, most of what I know, even regarding those subjects, are content that I've learned from attending these ILADS conferences and webinars. So
Well, and it's funny, I think ILADS we are the epitome of just working quietly behind the scenes, and we've been doing it for years. It's not new, but I'm new and I want to be able to shout it from the rooftop. So
yeah.
no, this is folks who've been doing this for years. I mean, you who've been an ILADS member for so many years have come to conferences, have experienced that education. No, it's not new, but well, darn it, we need to let more people know that this is happening. Stop being so quiet about it.
Yes, I agree. So what can someone expect? Like, let's say attending the annual scientific conference. What would a medical professional expect to leave with?
Exhaustion from so many days of so many things. And again, I say that as the non-clinician and going to my first conference last year. But no, truly, we launched the conference. We always have on the first day that fundamentals course, and it's set up into modules. And actually, teasing it out a little bit, we're gonna try to transition into more of a, I would say, fundamentals and an advanced fundamentals. So we're going to that next stage of fundamentals for folks. And while we do that, we have other tracks going on at the same time, on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday this year. So it's multiple days, multiple tracks. You are saturated with information by the time you leave there. And it is darn near impossible to get to every session. So of course we record everything, and everybody who goes to the conference gets the opportunity to have those recordings and be able to listen to them. But I think maybe as important, not more important, but as important with the actual sessions and the presentations is the networking that everybody gets to do. I mean, you're in the trenches day to day, you're seeing patients, but it is so good to step away from your office, as we all know, take a breath, take a breather, and network with colleagues, ask the tough questions. I mean, I remember walking down hallways and actually hearing, well, hey, I've got this patient that they're presenting with this, and this. I've been treating them with this, and what do I do? And getting 3 or 4 perspectives just in a little circle of folks in between sessions. So there's a huge networking component that I think can only happen when you come together in person. And we all kind of scoff at that until we actually show up and realize just how important that is for ourselves and for this community. And then in addition, it's great to be able to have the exhibit hall where you've got some fantastic providers of all kinds of products and services that serve this community. And here's where, again, I think whether you in your practice decide to use a particular product or service, it's good to know what's out there. And there's some really cool things that are out there that maybe you don't know about or you're curious about to learn. This is the opportunity to do it. I mean, everybody is there for one reason, to learn and to share and to grow. And so what a great opportunity. You don't have to leave with anything, but you can definitely be able to get to have all that information. And just getting the business cards of colleagues, getting the networking, and of course the all important CMEs. We want to make sure that we give you all those things to go home with. So I'm not kidding. When you go home from that, you're exhausted. It is what a phenomenal opportunity, I feel like, to get all that you can. And I will say, I think this past year we had as many non-ILADS members attend the conference as ILADS members. And I think that was a key important point that I brought home, that, oh, we still have some room to grow. So I want to encourage, obviously, the ILADS members to come year after year, submit an abstract for presentation. It's a great opportunity to showcase your learning. If you have a publication, if you're doing research, if you have something unique, absolutely showcase that with this group. But also share with those non-ILADS members. That's, I think, the more important thing, to be able to get those folks, to get those butts in the seats, to learn, and be able to share and grow this community.
Yeah. There's definitely a saturation, but I think it's a healthy saturation. And what I say to my friends and colleagues who are new, it's like learning a new language.
Yeah,
But it's like once you learn it, then you get it and you understand it and you can converse in it, right? But like, in the beginning, it's like it can be overwhelming, but just like anything new is. So I
absolutely.
think coming year after year after year, like you just absorb everything. And then yeah, the exhibit hall is wonderful. And again, like whether you choose to use certain modalities or not, I mean, Lyme disease patients are some of the most tenacious, resourceful patients
No
on the
kidding.
planet. And, they do just as much, if not more research than their clinicians do. And, they have a lot of questions. Most of my patients come in with a notebook with several pages of questions, like for their appointment. And yeah, like it's so important to stay up to date on all of the different modalities and adjunctive therapies and testing and, everything else that's out there. And I think that you guys do a really great job of including all of these industry experts but also vetting them because there's also some things out there that aren't necessarily on the up and up. So it's just nice too to have that sort of comfort level that like if they're at ILADS, they're there for a reason, and that's nice.
And I'll tell you one interesting thing. Going through this process last year, the program committee that vets the abstracts and all the presentations that come in. I mean, we have a pretty rigorous process. I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty impressive. And what's interesting I found is folks will submit abstracts for research that might not be new, and the program committee will really scrutinize that and go, well, what's new out of this? No, we already know this. We've had this presentation already, or they can find that somewhere else. We need to see what's new, and what really is a cutting edge is kind of a little overused, but it does sort of fit in this instance. And it was wonderful to see that process. Like, oh yeah, they're really taking this seriously, and they pour over those abstracts. And many times we would go back to the potential presenter to go, okay, we need to get more information. We need to get updates. What new are you putting out there? We want to see, what makes this appropriate for this topic. And it really is, I think, what kind of sets us apart, and why we actually call it the scientific conference. There's lots of great education out there. We offer webinars, but it might not be appropriate for the scientific conference. So it's a wonderful process to actually sit and wade through, so that really, yeah, what we're putting forth is really the best.
Yeah, that's great. So also though, like ILADS has treatment guidelines, right? We haven't even talked about the treatment guidelines. And
True story.
I forget who the first author was, but I know Dr. Burrascano back in the early 2000s, right? Or was it late 90s?
Late 90s, early
Late
2000s.
90s. Yep. And
Yeah.
I know that this has been revised and whatnot, but how does ILADS work with researchers and medical providers to kind of like keep those research guidelines up to date?
So that's a really great thing. And I think this was one of ILAD's shining stars. So the most recent one, ILAD's guidelines that are out there are from 2014. Dan Cameron, Betty Maloney, and Lynn Johnson are the authors of that one. And they, reading the historical components of this, whew, that was some effort to be able to get that out and share it with the public. It is still up on ILAD's website, and actually we are looking at the potential of doing an update on it. I mean, 2014 was 10 years ago now, and the care for the patient has progressed since then, or has it? This is one of the things that they're really wanting to look at, is from what's in those guidelines, is that still the standard of care? Let's scrutinize that again. And so we're just starting to look at how we want to do it. What do we want to look at? The board is really taking a working, roll up your sleeves and really try to look at that. So coming back to the research question of that, I mean, the guiding principle obviously is found in those guidelines, but we want to make sure that the research that's out there and the research that folks are doing right now, can it be used to update the guidelines? Can it be used to be able to further that patient care? There's some wonderful research happening. ILADS members are doing it, non-ILADS members are doing it, and I actually want to be able to showcase that research and be able to offer that to not just members but to the public at large. So if you go to the ILADS website, you'll see just a really robust website full of publications and research and such. And I want to be able to curate that in such a way that makes sense to the clinician as well as the patient consumer. Just as you said, they're more tenacious in doing the research, so we want to be able to offer what we have out there, and again showcasing those ILADS members. So through our website, through our monthly newsletter that we send to all manner of folks, we offer that to the public as well as to clinicians. Be able to show, here's what's happening, here's some research, here's early feedback on this, here's publications, and just offer this smorgasbord of learning through research. So yeah, so the guidelines are a key component of that.
Yeah, they're very helpful. It was one of the first things when I joined ILADS that it was like I had it printed out kind of like on my desktop as my little Lyme Bible. Yeah. So the upcoming 2024 scientific conference is going to be in San Antonio, Texas this year.
Mhm.
And it is November 7th,
7th through 10th.
7th through 10th.
Yeah.
And ilads.org is the
You go to
website.
ilads.org, actually /events, and you can see all the information. We still have the submit abstracts up, so you're welcome to, if you're a practitioner and you have a topic you want to submit, send that, and we'll hopefully get registration up in the next couple of months, which will of course have the preliminary program and agenda and some of the things that we're offering.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So Sarah, anything else that you would like to share with our listeners?
So I think the one big thing that I want to be able to share is from the ILADEF side. This is again how we help make sure that practitioners can get education, that research is happening, and that we can offer opportunities to the patient, to the consumer, to the public. It's through the Education Foundation. It's a 501c3. All donations are welcome, tax deductible. We are always looking for grants to get to the organization so that we can grant out funding to folks. And we're expanding the scope of that as well. So be sure to go to iladef.org or go to ilads.org, and there's an ILADEF button. You can click right there. But that's really, we don't receive any government funding. We rely solely on philanthropic support, and every donation counts. I say from the penny on up to, we're welcoming, the $1 million donation. So anybody ready for that? So, but that really is a key to the success of ILADS and ILADEF, is being able to get those donations from folks to be able to pay it forward.
Absolutely. Anything else you would like to share?
Always go to ilads.org, go to our social handles, ilads.lyme. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. We're always wanting to grow this community. I humbly offer myself, if you have a question, if you have any kind of comment or suggestion, I'm always looking for collaborations and partnerships. Always feel free to reach out and email me, squillen@ilads.org. I'm hoping that this past year is just a tiny example of all the wonderful things that are yet to come.
I'm sure it is. And thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Well, and thank you for offering this wonderful platform to be able to share not just ILADS, not just me talking, but share fantastic practitioners and experts and wonderful, wonderful opportunity. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm on a mission, like I say, to talk about Lyme and vector-borne disease to anyone and everyone who will listen to me. So
Thank you so much.
absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I hope that you've found this information helpful on your journey to healing Lyme. Have a great night. We'll see you next time.